I'm not a director, but I'm not good at those roles.
We talk about stuff that people typically don't talk about.
I always try to do stuff free with other people.
Even someone like you at your level realizes like, hey, it's okay to still go shoot some stuff for free.
I think it's just that I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm legitimate, so I just fake it.
I'll be a little vulnerable here. Like about a year ago, I went to some therapy because I was dealing with some stuff. What's good, Creative Fam? Brandon Washington here, and welcome back to another episode of Uncensored. Yo, so much is currently going on. And first of all, I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in for this week's episode. This is our pre-NAB episode. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about in NAB, so we just put it into the chat. Who's going to NAB? I want to know because I'm going to be there. Our guest today is going to be there. And of course, my amazing co-host, Mr. Jarrell Peak, is also going to be there with me.
Gonna be there.
We're going to be there.
Super high.
Today, I have a special guest on, and I am super pumped about having him today because the truth is that me and Brady go way back. We've gotten a chance to meet each other on a few different NAB trips. Actually, the first time we met, I believe, was actually at NAB. And then from there, we got a chance to go to some Sony trips together. And I feel like every time we see each other, it's just like we link up, and it's almost like time never even, like, there was no gap in our time hanging out with each other. But one of the things I like the most about Brady and his content and everything that he does is that he actually takes the element that's my favorite, which a lot of people don't know this, Jarrell. My favorite thing in the filmmaking space is actually lighting. I know it feels like it would be cameras, although cameras is a very close second. I think lighting to me is so important, and it completely changes the way the overall video feels. And so today I'm really excited to have on to the show my good friend and amazing filmmaker, cinematographer, DP, Mr. Brady Bessette. Brady, what is up, bro?
Hello. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for that wonderful intro, making me sound just a little bit better than, we both know the reality of that. But I'm happy to be here, man. I'm happy to be here.
Dude, I was like, first of all, I was already telling you before the show started, and everybody can already see it. You can tell he's an amazing DP because, I mean, just look at that live stream setup. I mean, we got some nice lighting already happening, practicals and whatnot. I'm like, man, looking at your setup, I definitely need to step up my game a little bit. But that's what I love about filmmaking, is that we always have that opportunity to keep growing and getting better.
It's always fun to play and look back on what we did wrong, actually. So it's always a long ladder to climb, but it's a fun one. Like, as you said, lighting is fun. Obviously, if anybody is familiar with me and my channel and my work, it's very lighting heavy. And I love playing around with lights. So it's fun to do it when I'm doing live stream with you.
Yo, dude, speaking of making mistakes, I figured this week I wanted to start the show with probably something that most filmmakers don't want to talk about. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This is the Uncensored Show. Play on words there. But the reason why we call it the Uncensored Show is because we talk about stuff that people typically don't talk about on a live stream. Filmmakers normally want to just put their best images, like you go on Instagram and you see like the best frames and it all looks perfect, but like we never post kind of like our mistakes. I wanted to start today's show by talking about some of our mistakes, and I'll go first just to kind of set the tone. So Jarrell doesn't even know this story because it's kind of rough, but yesterday I was on a job. And it was one of those jobs that's like easy. You know how you get those jobs from time to time and you're like, oh, this is going to be simple. It's like maybe one or two lights. You don't have to really think too hard about it, right? I always find that those are the jobs where I make the biggest mistakes. So I got my lighting package packed up. I got my camera package set up. We're ready to go. We get about 30 minutes down the road and I realize I don't have a light stand. I don't have a single C-stand. I don't have a light stand. I left the whole kit.
You better get creative.
Immediately, I start freaking out. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm just going to have to rig this light.
Hollywood. Bounce
it off the wall, something. Bro, the setup we ran, I wish I had a picture. We took a tripod. We took one of our extra tripods. And you know how the tripod has the arm on it? We took the tripod. We laid the head flat so the arm was sticking straight up. And I promise you, we took our light and we stuck it right on that tripod arm.
What did you put on there?
It was a 300D, so it wasn't too heavy.
I thought it was
but
600.
a softbox wasn't gonna work. So we literally took that light, blasted it at a wall, and we were like, "Oh yeah, it's more natural." and look, client had no idea. Image looks great. We shot it in ProRes RAW. We're happy with it. But like, just so if you have ever been in a situation where you show up on set and you feel like, I have made a massive mistake.
There's always the one thing. There's always one thing that.
And it's the easy jobs. It's always the easy job. Travis is in the chat right now. He's saying, "Oh my God," because he was there. He saw this blunder. And dude, the setup, we were doing everything to try to get this light up, but we got it up, and the shot looks great. And at the end of the day,
at least you added on some sort of like stand or something that could pass to somebody who doesn't really know what a light stand is.
Yeah, if they don't know the difference between a tripod and a light stand, we might be okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good one. I feel like there's always fun things. Like, I remember that brings me back to one shoot that I did a while ago. And it's not as much of like a scrappy, like quick rig kind of deal, but we were like already over on time. And I just needed a bounce. Like all we had was like an MC at the time. The gaffer had to like run to the truck to get other stuff. We didn't have time for that. So I just like shouted out. I was a DP on this. I was just like, somebody get me something white. I don't care what it is. And one of the, I think it was the grip, came back with just like a decorative white big pillow from the location. And just the whole shot, he was just bouncing it off of the pillow. And it looked fantastic. But it's like one of those things where like, it's fun to get creative and a little bit scrappy, but I mean, with lighting, it gets a little bit tough because there's safety involved, obviously. Right. So I tried to avoid it as best as I can. But I mean, like even right now, I've got like, I don't know how I'm going to expose my whole office, but I've got a.
Oh, you're good. Let's take them wide. Let's take them full screen so that way we can see the whole
full
thing.
Screen. Now you're going to expose too much. But let's copy down. I've got a light right here on my gimbal, just balanced right there because I didn't have a stand to go set it up on. So I'm exposing myself right now. I probably shouldn't have done that. We're going to lose a lot of viewers in this, but you know.
Dude, I think that is the one thing I like about doing this show. And like when we take this content, we cut it up and we share it with people, is that they realize that like the journey is not perfect. Like there are speed bumps. Every production, like I tell most people, like the skill set of being a filmmaker, 90% of it is just problem solving. Like
it's just getting crafty with what you got.
Yeah, like you just gotta. I mean, like, because at the end of the day, like most films are like, there's never enough budget, right? Like there's never enough gear, so you're always just kind of like getting like kind of scrappy with what you have and trying to make it work. But one thing that I've noticed from you is that when it comes to like filming your sets, you do a really good job of, even on your YouTube, I've watched a lot of, obviously I'm a huge fan, but I'm also a friend, but I'm a fan. But like I'll watch your breakdowns and your sets look like these like, I mean, they honestly look like they could be like in an episode of Euphoria, like these episodes where you know there are millions of dollars behind it and you're able to get these same looks. How do you go about trying to get the most out of a shot when you are limited with whether that's, you know, budget gear or time or just trying to craft that look? What does your process look like when you're saying like, I got to get a shot that looks like $1 million, but I ain't got $1 million to spend on it?
I think it's just that I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm legitimate. So I just fake it and make it look like it looks cool. No, that's a good question. I think a lot of it comes from, I do a lot of, I don't want to call it studying, but I like admire a lot of other people's work, and I admire a lot of behind the scenes of a lot of people that are better than myself. So I at least, I always say that no matter your skill set, kind of like a rabbit trail, but like I always try to do stuff free with other people or just jump on with other people or at least low rate. And I do that because regardless of where I am, I'm always going to pick up at least one thing from some sort of shoot. And a lot of the times it's like creative ways to rig things, or like how somebody bounced a light somewhere or shaped a light somewhere, or like how they set up camera or something like that. I feel like that there's always one takeaway because just like myself, I'm self-taught. I've got my own routines that sticks out to you. Other people have routines that stick out to me and things like that. So I think that for lack of running off on a whole other tangent, I just try to be overly critical, always too critical, until there's like an AD breathing down my neck saying like, dude, we had to get the shot 30 minutes ago. What are you doing? And then I'm like, oh, I guess I should get going now.
So it sounds like it's a mixture of a little bit of imposter syndrome and a lot of practice and studying is what it sounds like from that answer.
I think that there's always this thing where it's like I've ran into a lot, especially in years prior, where things work in theory. I realize that there's a big divide between theory and reality when on a film
Mm.
set. Because especially like I've got a whole light plan, I've got it mapped out, drawn up. I go like the whole extra mile, and then I get there and it doesn't work at all. And I'm like, all right, we're back to the basics, and we got to get the shot in 30 minutes. So there's a big divide between theory and reality. So I realized that I don't know where I was going with that, but something along the lines of just practicing it and realizing what you think might work probably won't work, and then trying to figure out a quick way to problem solve. Like you said in the beginning, getting crafty with it right there on location is so important. Like you could be as much of a perfectionist as you can be on paper, but when it gets to a film set, what really matters to me, most of it or a lot of it at least, is just getting crafty and like being able to improvise and work fast when things go wrong. Not if, because they will. So when.
And I think that's actually really important because I agree with you. There is something like I feel like every film set does have like that one thing, and like sure you can plan all day long, but like having the skill set or at least the mental fortitude to be like, all right, in the event that something goes wrong, I do have basics to fall back onto. I think is super important, but the only way to have those basics that you can fall back onto is to practice those skill sets. And so you even saying that someone at your status who, you're professional DP, you're professional gaffer, like you're working in the industry, you're making a living doing this. You're also going out of your way to teach it online for others as well. But like even someone like you at your level realizes like, hey, it's okay to still go shoot some stuff for free because for me, it's not just about like, oh, I'm shooting it for free. I'm not getting paid, but you feel like you're almost learning from the education that happens
Yeah.
along the process and how that will then ultimately make you better at your craft later.
We actually have a comment for Brady. It's crazy to hear Brady say he has imposter syndrome because I keep telling my husband that when I do something as good as Brady, I will stop having imposter syndrome.
That's what you think. And then you get better, and then you see other people, and then you still have imposter syndrome, or at least for me. And it's funny because there's this, I guess, to backtrack on a story that it should help me more, but it still doesn't. It's just a story I tell to other people and hope to forward on this advice. But there's this guy that I really look up to, and he's established. I think he's in the Canadian Society of Cinematographers. I forget what it's called, but he's very up there. Very beautiful work. Been doing this for like 20 years, and I was like, dude, this guy's so like he is him. He's it. And I was talking to him one night, and he's the same thing. He's like, yeah, I'm like, I don't know why you're looking to me for advice. There's these people who like these are the real good guys, and I'm like, this never is gonna end, is it? I'm just chasing this tail forever, aren't I? So I think that it's always, but I mean, it's a sign of getting better. I think that like you always look. It's kind of the thing that people say, like you surround yourself with the five, or you are the product of the five people you surround yourself. So if you're always looking up to other people, immediately mentally you're in a totally different ball game, rather than if you're just like, oh, I'm better than all these other people. Fantastic. It's great to pat yourself on the back every now and then. But if you're only looking backwards, I think that it's not going to push you forward and make you realize that you could be better. Yeah. Or maybe I'm just overly critical, and that's just, my red flag.
So I'll be a little vulnerable here. Like about a year ago, I went to some therapy because I was dealing with some stuff, and one of the big elements I had was imposter syndrome. Like it was huge. I was like, because it was like almost like crippling me because I was like, I don't know if I should like it everything, like in business and in YouTube and in filmmaking. And one thing, and this may help anybody out there who has this. Now I'm not going to say I've solved it because I definitely haven't. But at least what my therapist was telling me was that like sometimes imposter syndrome can actually be a little bit of a superpower because it's that feeling of not being good enough that actually pushes you to work harder, which makes you then good enough. But because you never fully feel like you're still good enough, you keep pushing yourself and going further and further. And typically those who are like, who are like, I'm him, I got it, blah, 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 they are the ones that typically end up falling off because like once you feel like you've achieved everything you wanted to achieve, you got nowhere else to go. So I'm not going to say I've overcome imposter syndrome at all. But I will say that if you do feel it, one, it's normal, but then two, it kind of works in our favor, I think, sometimes. Because Lord knows, I definitely don't feel like I'm watching your setup right now, and I'm like, I need more blue light back here, right?
That's so funny. I was just looking up at the screen. I'm like, should I like stop down and bring my key up a little bit more? And I'm like, it's a live stream. You know what I mean?
Dude,
Watching
like,
you tweet your
somebody's gonna call me out on this right now. Turn on a false color, and then you.
Dude, like that's I think that's the sign of a professional. A professional never stops trying to learn and get better. Brandon had a comment. I want to pull that up.
Oh yes.
So he says, like, imposter syndrome is a sign of growth. There's always going to be the next level you feel like you can't reach, but as soon as you do, it returns and the cycle continues. And I believe that. I legitimately believe that, but I don't think it should be something that's like crippling. But I do think that like it's okay. And like anyone who's watching this right now, I just want to, before we move on to the next question, just want to say like, if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, don't worry about it. Like it's absolutely normal. And as Brady has said, like I have honestly had like the opportunity to speak with some people who like I look up to and like just like Brady say, like that dude is him. Like he's making Hollywood movies and he's telling me he has imposter syndrome. It just lets me know like I'm not alone in that feeling. Unfortunately, it obviously means that even at the higher levels, it doesn't 100% go away. But I mean, it still means that you are able to keep moving forward. So
I wish there was like a software update that every time you improve a little bit more, you can like take a step back and actually like realize that instead of just being stuck in this like quicksand of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So speaking of having sort of imposter syndrome and like figuring out your craft, I feel like you have a very unique style. Like, and like, I feel like that comes from that nonstop pursuit of like trying to get better with every project you do. And like I mean, like immediately, if I hop on YouTube and I watch, like, if you just play me some random clips, I feel like you're one of those people who I can like look at it and be like, oh, that's kind of got a Brady style to it. And like, I've even seen other filmmakers replicate your style and they don't give you credit. And I'm like, I bet you if I go look at that person's followings list, Brady is there because I can see the influence there. So like, how did you come about coming up with this style? I know you said you kind of like pull things from different creators, but how do you decide what you want to stick? Because I feel like we all do that. Like we all watch a lot of creators and we see influences that we like, but there's something about our own internal creativity that lets certain things actually stick and become a part of our style. What for you makes something stick and make it a part of your style?
That's a good question. Let me think on that. I really like that question, actually. I haven't gotten asked that. And it's funny because I get that comment a lot about like, this has your look, or this is a Brady style or whatever. And I'm just doing what I think looks best. I'm trying to, replicate something else, or I'm achieving somebody else's look, which I guess is kind of where it comes from. And I don't know if you guys have read it. I've had like 55,000 people tell me to read Steal Like an Artist, and I finally actually did. So yeah. I don't know if anybody watching it or if you or read it, but it's really like, in a nutshell, it's like it's okay to steal in a sense of doing so like an artist, which I'm just reiterating the title as I'm developing what I'm trying to say. But it's like taking the people that you like, the 5 people that you admire, and you're taking aspects of all of that. So different people, like say Greg Fraser, beautiful work. It speaks for himself. Roger Deakins, whatever. All of these top people, I might take something from all of them and kind of create it into my own work. And I'm not doing it with a mindset of like, how can I make my style? I think it's naturally like I've got a vision that I want to try to get to, and I'm just going to try my best to implement things that I've seen from all of these different people that all kind of develop into a new people's style, which is my own. So I don't know if that really makes sense, but I think that it's like I'm not doing it intentionally of like, this is my style. It's more of like, this is what I know, whether it's just a familiar thing and like a repeating habits, or like I just know what I am trying to get. I mean, everybody, I guess, does have their own style, whether it's either art or sports or whatever. Like in baseball, I don't know why it just came to mind, like Kevin Youkilis always had his like hand up on the bat, if you guys are baseball watchers. everybody's got their own thing that works for them. And I guess that the way that I choose to either shoot or light, or the way that I shoot is to light pretty heavily, I think that's just developed to something that I really enjoy doing.
So is there ever a time where you feel like, because I know you do this professionally and so you get hired out, and so I always find it to be a very unique relationship between directors and or clients and the DP, where you obviously as the creative and the DP who's developed this style, this Brady style, but you get hired out to do a job where like your style doesn't 100% match to the vision of the director. Is that something that you find to be challenging, or do you feel like you've gotten to a place to where you're really getting hired more so because you have this style and it is supposed to be a part of the body of work?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a balance, because it's inevitable. Director's boss man, so they're always going to have the last kind of final call. But a director's going to pick a DP based off of their style. So as you show your reel and develop your reel, directors can be like, I want that. That's why I'm hiring you on. But there's also, say you bring a client into the picture. Now there's a client telling the director that they want something, and the director's got to forward it to the DP. So it does happen where my vision doesn't align with either the director's vision or the director's vision. And that's something where you kind of work to find a middle ground. I'm going to push back. I'm always going to push back to get what I want. But sometimes it's like kind of meeting in the middle of like, oh, well, you want haze, or I want haze. You don't want haze. What if we throw like lens diffusion on and it makes it look a little bit better? There's a compromise. And I had that on a film that I did, where they wanted it very clean, very like on sticks, locked off shots, very kind of simple in a way, which works for the director's vision. But me having that style that I do, I've got like a dirtier style, or more like handheld, or something more dynamic. So there were a few shots where I was like, I really think that story-wise, this conveys what we're trying to say a little bit better. And explaining it, instead of just saying like, this is what I want to do, this will look pretty cool. It's more so like me trying to be conscious of the final product. If it's a film where I'm conveying emotion, I want to convey that emotion to the best of my abilities, whether it's with lighting or with camera movement or whatever it is. So just talking with the director, seeing like what the end goal is instead of like what the image is supposed to look like, and then just kind of going down the ladder from there.
I feel like what I like about your answer there is like, even though you do have your own style, it feels like your feedback to the director is still story driven, which is like, you know, you're not just saying, I want this because this is Brady's style, but you're also like sort of influencing and sort of helping the director in a way of saying like, this style that I've been able to create myself, it allows me to help you tell your story better, which I think is really interesting. But then also that big word that you said, which is like a big one in the world of filmmaking, which is collaboration. Being a filmmaker is a massive collaborative, feat. Like, I think the thing that always blows me away when I go to the movie theaters, like to the cinema, is how many names are scrolling at the end.
It's
like
insane.
How many people touched this project that I just consumed in, 2.5 hours. You know what I mean? Like, how many lives, how many families, how many people, and that collaborative nature of filmmaking is kind of a basic necessity because there's so many different pieces going on. So as someone who, like yourself, you DP, I know you grip, obviously you cam operate, you direct some of your own projects and you do your own projects, especially like on YouTube and stuff. When you look at all the roads of filmmaking and like all the different roles that have to be handled and how they all work together, which one do you think like Brady feels most at home in? Because I know as a filmmaker, a lot of times you kind of like, especially when you're just getting started off, you take the job you can take. You get hired as a first AC. Hey, I can get focused, right? You get hired as a DP, you're maybe extremely happy, or if you just got hired as a grip, then you're like, hey, look, I'll move whatever you want. So like, where do you feel is like home when you're like, oh, if I get hired for this, I'm in my happy place.
I definitely, I know I'm a DP, and I'm happy there. Directing, yes, you mentioned I do some of my projects. I do that sparingly sometimes when I've just got a concept that I just want to be my baby. But I know at the end of the day, I'm not a director. A project that we were just talking about before the call that I took on, I was essentially like directing it or producing it, but I'm not good at those roles. I know my role is strong as a DP. So yes, I was overseeing everything, but I hired out a producer and I hired out a director to make that happen, because when it comes to the logistics and what is actually needed out of, say, a director role, I'm not good at that. And I know that. And I think it's important to know your weaknesses and know your strengths. And my strength is definitely being a DP. I love working with the director and having that collaborative nature. But at the end of the day, the director comes to me and is like, this is what I want. Let's get creative with it. Rather than coming with a clean canvas, that's where I'm a little bit, I know it's a little bit more of a weak point to me, to just like have all of the options on the table and just do something. That's really difficult. So where I'm most comfortable is definitely DP. Not to mention, I love lighting department. Gaffing is always a blast. It's always fun. I love making a DP happy. I hate making a DP sad when it comes to that. But it's with that is very physically tolling, and maybe that's why I don't always love gaffing. I think that there's two totally different like personas that I put on when I'm either in G&E or in DP and camera department, because like when I'm in DP, I'm like, oh yeah, take my camera, take that, whatever. And when I'm in G&E, I'm just like that rugged old grip. And I'm just like getting dirty. I've got the gloves on. I'm just sitting on the back of the gate and I'm just like waiting for like heavy things to be moved. And it's so funny that like, I don't know, just a fun fact, I guess, that I guess I'm bipolar when it comes to my on set persona.
Hey, that's okay. I think sometimes it's fun to jump between different roles. You know, I have a project that that we're working on. I don't know how much I can give away on it, but we're working on this really cool project. And initially, I was hired as the director, and I just realized that I didn't have the time to give the project what it needed. And so I was like, hey, maybe you actually hire a different director, and then I'll just come on as the DP of the project. Yeah. You can still get my, because it's more of a visual based project. We're shooting like on an LED wall and stuff. And I was like, I can still DP it and get you the look that you want, but I don't have time to direct this thing. We need to kind of hand this over. And like, I think sometimes it's important to really know not only where you strive, but like from project to project, you might strive differently, in a different position, and being able to
admit that too. Like I think it's really important to put pride aside for the sake of the project, because it's so easy, especially in the early days. And like still in my nature, it's like, I got to prove to the world that I'm actually good and I can do the things. But it's like you said, you go watch, if you like Dune 2, I was just watching it a week or two ago, and there's like 30 million names that scroll across.
Yes.
If absolutely. It was just one person doing it, that Dune 2 would not look like Dune 2. No. So it's important to just admit, like, I know my weaknesses. I know where I'm great, and then put everything into where you're great, and then bring on more people for where you're weak.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have a better product that's done. And then when you go to show that off, like, no one cares if Dune 2 looks like crap, but it was shot by one guy. They're going to be like, yeah, you didn't do a good job. But like, if you're a smaller, cog in a bigger machine, but you get a Dune 2 out of it, it's like, yeah, I worked on Dune 2. It's like, wow.
Yeah. And it's funny because all these essential roles that we talk about, whether like a gaffer or a cinematographer or a director, these are all, especially once you get to big Hollywood sets or bigger projects, these are just department heads. Yeah. Meaning, like, typically they don't do any like heavy lifting, or they don't do much of the actual work. They're just in charge of that department. And then there are tons of people that funnel under that where they delegate all the work to. So that's always helpful, like interesting to know. It's like, oh, a gaffer in the like big Hollywood sets, they don't touch a stand. They're not doing anything. And I'm like, that kind of sounds nice. Maybe I could be a gaffer. It's really like when I learned that, I was like, oh, so like it's not just one person for all. It's more so like that lead person is just calling the shots, and they just have the brains, and that's all not all they're good for, because the brains are the most important thing. But it's like they're not doing it all. They're delegating the tasks.
That's why one of the things I always tell people is like really understand the logic and like the mindset behind some of these things, because I get it on YouTube, and like a lot of the people, especially people who consume this show and even like the industry, that even the stuff that I do is a much smaller scale. We're not Hollywood, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's still good to know what all these different roles are and how they interact on a set. So that way, as you continue to progress in your journey, you can know what you need to do, and you can know how the roles get broken out. And if you had, the ability to have 5 people on your team, or 1 person on your team, or 10 people on your team, you would know how to delegate those tasks.
Exactly.
But speaking of being a DP, we put out a poll at the very beginning of this, at the very beginning of the call, to ask people what was their favorite lighting brand. Now, I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to tell you guys how this normally works when you get on set. There's probably a lot of different brands that get used when you're on set. It's normally like, what package can we get our hands on? But we know you have an affinity to a certain brand. And so we want to ask you, what has been one of your favorite lights? What's been one of the most versatile lights that you've been able to use on set? And then we're going to see how that aligns with the poll today.
Good question. Are we going like specific, like one product, or like a broad world of light?
I'd love to hear your take on it regardless.
See, I'm getting technical. I'm like, is this like day, nighttime? Where are we?
See,
It's got to be everything. It's got to be it all.
If you don't understand the value of even just that statement right there, that lets you know that he's a DP who's thinking ahead of time, because he's like, everything changes depending.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, do we need power? Okay, so I'll kind of branch off, and I'm gonna be annoying and kind of not answer your question by answering your question. I think that when I ask that question, I'm thinking ahead. I'm going like, is it a day interior or day or night interior, whatever, figuring out my options. So with that being said, if it's day interior, I would do something bright and hot that I can modify like a bunch of times, like a 1200D. Great. But that's not my go-to light that I'm going to pull out. And that's aperture. I like aperture. Aperture is not the be-all, end-all. I think that it's just something that is tried and true. I've worked with a lot of lights that are just finicky and waste time, that are just like the lower end of the spectrum or newer into the industry. And those little seconds where you're finicking with things or things go wrong, there's literally no time for on a film set. People get mad and like, why isn't it happening in 3 seconds? So that's something that I think that aperture is good and tried and true and reliable on, which is completely irrelevant to my answer. I would say if I were to take one light, it's going to be probably like an aperture 600C. And reason being is that being a point source, you can modify it a million different ways. You can get a really hard sunlight look. You can get a really beautiful soft key light that's going through a huge soft source. But additionally, on top of that, you've got more versatility of like, if your light doesn't feel enough of like sunset, it's a bicolor and a colored light. So there's versatility in that direction as well. Not only can you get like warm, nice sunset, but you can get like a warm tungsten light like this, or go full color like the blue that's back there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of options. So if I'm going to take like one light out of the kit, out of the truck, whatever, for most purposes, it would probably be that.
All right. Well, that was actually just a trick question, because you made a whole video explaining that exact same topic. I just wanted to see
that I mentioned.
That was just a trick. I just wanted to see if he's telling the truth in these YouTube videos. Y'all know this is uncensored, so.
Okay, listen. Let me justify it. The video was a 300C, and I said a 600C. Same thing, just backs me up with a little more output. Price difference is totally different. I think the answer is the same, and I don't want to hear it. Move on.
Look, his numbers are different, y'all. His numbers are different. No, I'm just kidding. No, and I think the big point, he's gone and he left. No, I think what I liked about your answer, even in that video, 300C or 600C, was just finding something that's versatile. And I think when it comes to lighting, I think people pick up cameras with the idea of versatility, but like when it comes to some of the other elements like audio and lighting, the versatility is not always there when you're first getting started. Like you find something because you watched one YouTube video and you're like, oh, that's the end all be all. I need tubes. And it's like, well, tubes are not really that versatile. Yeah. Or you're like, oh, I'm going to get this one really nice matte light or something like that. Or I'm going to get a little LED panel. And it's like, when you're just getting started, there is a lot of versatility in lighting as well. And so picking out pieces of gear that can allow you to be more versatile, in my opinion, actually help you out a lot. So that's just my opinion. Brady walked away. I'm sorry, dude. I totally got
But it was killing me. It looked so bad. It was just driving me crazy. Yeah.
Look, that's a DP. He's like, look, this over. I don't even want to look at the replay.
The sun's coming out. It's hitting this. It's way too, like, I just don't. I can't stand for it. I'm sorry. Move on. I'm not wasting any more time.
This is the DP. I appreciate you coming on and dropping some knowledge and just letting people know, like, everything that's going on and how they can learn and how they can improve as, you know, just filmmakers themselves. Really quick, I know I roughly talked about it, but I did want to let the people know.
Oh, wait, hold on. I know what you're going to say. I did not put my LUTs on that. So that second shot was not created with the new Reverie LUTs. Check out the link that Brandon's going to put in the comments right now.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that was, yeah, minus 3 points.
No, dude. Seriously, if you guys are interested in LUTs, which I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, I don't recommend LUTs for most people because not a lot of work goes into a lot of LUTs that go on sale. I know that's a very uncensored opinion to make publicly because a lot of creators sell a lot of LUTs. But I know that Brady worked not only himself, but he worked with a team in order to create these LUT packs. And so that way you know that they're going to be quality. And, you know, just from seeing his work and seeing what he puts into them and knowing that I know the type of guy he is, that's the reason why I don't recommend, or that's the reason why I
Whoa.
Let me finish. It's live. I'm allowed to make mistakes. That's the reason why I don't feel bad recommending his LUT pack. So definitely check them out. We have them linked in the comment section. We'll also have them in the chat. We'll also have them in the description if you're watching this on the replay. But dude, thank you for bringing your knowledge to this game. I can't wait to hang out with you next week.
I'll see you tomorrow, man. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you if you're watching this so much. Until then, I'll catch you next time.
Thanks, bro.